What's up, peeps? Nick Battle, aka Ninos Corner. First off, if you like this content that is coming your way, hit that subscribe button. It means a ton. Hit that bell on YouTube. Get all my notifications here for the Ninos Corner Sports YouTube channel. Also, folks, if you're listening to this in the podcast and not on YouTube, where there's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher Breaker, the whole nine. Comment, like, share, 5-star comment, review. It means a lot. Helps the channel grow immensely. Today, folks, we're going to give a reaction video to the Steve Sarkisian press conference from August 25th, which is today, folks. But first off, prior to us getting to that, let's get into our sponsors. Hey, folks, the first sponsor is betus.com. Go to betus.com, get a 125% sign up bonus using the code NinosCorner, or go down in the descriptions, click that link, get that 125% bonus code. It'll help you out, folks. That is free money. Also, folks, next sponsor, support for the Ninos Corner podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below the waist grooming champions of the world. Go to manscaped.com, get free worldwide shipping and 20% off of your order using the code Ninos Corner, again at manscaped.com. But folks, we are here to talk about Steve Sarkisian and his press conference here at the University of Texas for the August 25th press conference. And we're going to just go ahead and get into it, folks. So without further ado, here's Coach Sarkisian.
I think obviously just the transitioning to the start of school and players getting acclimated to the schedule. I thought it's been good. It's been good to get guys back practicing. So all in all, positive week so far with, we'll have a decent sized walkthrough tomorrow and a mock game on Saturday.
So did you talk about what's the difference between a player-led team and a coach-led team? How's that going for the team, going to a player-led? And also, along that same story, you had Admiral McRaven come in. What was that experience like? Did he address the team?
Yeah. I think one thing when you're trying to become a player-led team is, from a coaching perspective, you're trying to point out the opportunities. When is an opportunity for the players to lead? They want to. It's not about the want to. It's about taking advantage of the opportunities when they present themselves. And sometimes it's in a positive moment. Sometimes it's in a moment of adversity. But as a coach, sometimes you have to kind of show them that now is the time. Now is the moment, and here is the way to go about it. So I think we're continually working on it. So, we've got a great team. We've got guys that have a bunch of want to and a lot of buy-in, but through it all, they're still learning how to. And I think we've made great strides there. We've got awesome leadership. It's just, capturing those moments when they present themselves. Admiral McRaven was.
Hey, just to pause on that, when you're talking about a player-led team, this goes across the gamut of anything when it comes to leadership, right? So, you guys know I'm in the military, and I wouldn't say player-led, but like a soldier-led team, is what I kind of deal with. So I always say, let your leaders lead, right? You got to let your leaders lead. They are in a position to lead because they are leaders. You got to let them lead. So what Coach Sarkisian is saying here, folks, is there's an opportunity for you to pull guys that can rally people. You can see guys that have the it factor in them. And when they have that it factor in them, you know that people will follow them. Those are the guys, especially when they're high performers, like a guy like Roshan Johnson, like a Bijan, like an Xavier Worthy, like a Overshawn, like a Byron Murphy. Those are guys that when they say something, the team's going to follow. So you'll see those guys start to pick things up and start to lead in a more positive way, lead in a more leadership role here. And there's times where he might bring them behind closed doors and say, hey, X, I saw you talking to such and such. Make sure he does this, or make sure you make your voice heard here. So those are player-led teams, the best organizations, not just sports teams, but the best organizations as a whole, or organizations that are run by the team and not necessarily ran by the CEO. And we were talking about the Texas football team, or any football team in the college football, atmosphere. That's a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, to be honest with you. So now it's an opportunity for the leaders underneath that CEO to lead their different sections, lead the team, and that makes things so much better. I always tell my troops, A+ leaders hire A+ people, because A+ people are not afraid to lose their job. They have that much confidence in himself, almost a sense of arrogance, almost that I'm that good. I don't care how good you are. You're not taking my job. And so Steve Sarkisian hires A-plus folks, a Kyle Flood, a Jeff Banks, Brennan Marion, Tashad Choice, PK, Jeff Choate. These are guys that could have had some pretty good jobs just along the way. But he understands that those A-plus leaders are going to instill leadership abilities within their A-plus hires. Their A-plus hires are these recruits that they're getting. Xavier Worthy, Quinn Ewers, Overshawn, and just look at the classes now. Kelvin Banks Jr. for Cal Flood, Cole Hudson. You're hearing rave reviews from DJ Campbell, Cam Williams as well. Those are A-plus hires by Cal Flood, and those A-plus hires are going to instill great leadership within the team and in their actual position group.
It's awesome. I think definitely had the utmost attention of our team. I thought it was pretty fascinating to watch our players as he spoke and the presence in which that he speaks. There weren't a lot of backs up against the back of their chairs. There was a lot of guys sitting forward, a lot of guys very attentive to his message, and I thought it was fantastic. I'm looking forward to having him back.
So that was, Coach Sarkisian basically talking about, the Admiral coming and talking to him. And everybody knows the Admiral. There's only one Admiral here at Texas that we all love, and it's Admiral McRaven. So, man, anytime you have an opportunity to have a general come and talk to you, just a general level officer, guys are going to be very into it because these guys have been on the front line. We always say that athletes are warriors and athletes are gladiators. You're men and women of those services who are serving and who have been to Afghanistan and been to Iraq and been to, back in the Vietnam and Desert Storm and just the whole nine, Korean War, World War I and II. And those guys are gladiators. Those are real gladiators, folks. Those are guys that were on the front line. And some of the special missions that the Admiral had when he was, in the military are missions that some of these guys can only fathom. These are things that are so important to the country, and these are just true gladiators that he has led. But I'm pretty sure he'll have that same message: let your leaders lead. And his leaders that he has groomed to become admirals as well have done some pretty important and pretty great things here for the military, not just for the military, but for the United States as a whole. So when you have a guy like that with that kind of stature come and talk to a team, of course, they're going to be all in because not only was he a UT grad, which says a lot, as well. He was, an admiral in the Navy and has done great things.
Scrimmage or No, we go through A to Z as if it's game day, from pregame meal to meetings to walkthroughs to pregame warm-ups to uniforms to actually playing and going through over 40 different scenarios as if the game were to occur. From we'll kick the ball off, and we have to substitute, and then we got to substitute if we get a stop, to punt return, to scoring a touchdown, to in the middle of a drive, our center's helmet might pop off and the backup center's got to be ready to go in. And so we try to play out a lot of scenarios to get our guys ready for games. Practice is difficult because a lot of what we do is scripted. And even when you scrimmage, sometimes we try to simulate game-like activities, but it's a lot of times offense versus defense. And so special teams have to have their own segment. When we mock a game, we truly play it as if it's a game and we are all on one sideline. And going through those substitutions, TV timeouts, different things are really important to stay in the flow of the game. And even for coaches, like from a defensive coach's perspective, when we scrimmage, you're calling it every play. When you go to a mock game, when the defense is off the field, the offense is calling it. The defense is making their adjustments. So we try to take the players through all of that so that they can find the rhythm in how the game goes.
You said at the beginning of camp.
This is very important for this team because it's a very young team. I think Steve Sarkisian said 55 of the actual scholarship players are first and second year, players. And with Texas having a huge 2022 class, especially a lot of these freshmen are going to be counted on to be, basically in the two deep, folks. You got, rumors going around that, Kelvin Banks Jr., Cole Hudson, could definitely be starting along with possibly Cam Williams. You got guys like DJ Campbell, who's actually pressing for time. You got Ethan Burke, who's also pressing for time too. Finkley's pressing for time as well. You got a lot of young players who are going to play. Savion Red or Brennan Thompson. These guys are going to play some ball this year. Quinn Ewers, he is, for all intents and purposes, he is a true freshman. Even though he did reclassify to go to Ohio State last year, he's still basically a true freshman. He skipped his senior season. So this should be his first true semester as a college, student. So you got a bunch of young players that have to understand the ins and outs, the TV commercials, things that they didn't have when they were in high school. So it's going to be very interesting to see how all the players cope with this, because this is something that could be very new. Well, not could. This is something that's going to be very new for them when it comes to playing a game at the collegiate level.
Yeah, the questions that you probably most wanted answered: offensive line, secondary, kicking game. How do you feel? Offensive line, secondary.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're closer. I think the emergence of Kelvin has been helpful at left tackle. I think that's given us a lot of flexibility with Andre and utilizing him. I think Cole Hudson has done a nice job emerging as well. So I feel comfortable up front. In the secondary.
All right, pause. We're talking about the offensive line and how Steve Sarkisian feels comfortable with the offensive line throughout the camps here. And I think the question was actually asked by Chip Brown, from 247. But once you look at this and hear exactly what the coach says, Kelvin Banks has provided a lot of flexibility within that offensive line. So Kelvin Banks, folks, we all know that Andre Carrick was the starting left tackle, and as far as now on paper, is still quote unquote the starting left tackle. But the emergence of Kelvin Banks Jr., if he's able to take over that left tackle spot, which is what people are thinking is going to happen here, then it gives him the flexibility to move Andre Carrick around. So what does that mean? Does Andre Carrick move to another guard position? Is he the right tackle now? Or is he a guy that is going to be your swing tackle? Somebody that if somebody goes down, you have a guy with some experience that can come in and play any position on that offensive line, probably minus center. So I think that's what that mainly is, because once you look at that, if Kelvin Banks takes over the starting left tackle position, he mentioned Cole Hudson again as a freshman. Cole Hudson, who all the reports are coming in that he is going to start at one of the guard positions. And you still have a guy like Christian Jones still out there at right tackle. And a lot of people are saying Cam Williams is pushing him for playing time at the right tackle position. That leaves either a guy like Andre Carrick to be your swing guy that can play the tackles, that can play the guards, or maybe he moves over to right tackle. And if you're not comfortable with a guy like Christian Jones, maybe that gives an opportunity to be a swing guy. But the emergence of some of these freshmen, folks, is giving him options for upperclassmen to be flexible within where they are going to play along the Texas offensive line.
I feel really good about our ability to understand our coverages and to communicate. We're communicating at a really high level comparatively, especially to where we were a year ago and even in spring. And then, we're making plays on the ball, which is a real positive. In the kicking game, I've seen.
Let's pause on the secondary piece. So Coach Sarkisian talked about the communication. He said that he's very high and positive on the communication. And just reading the reports and some of the tea leaves from the sites, Jaron Thompson has been one of the guys who they're saying is one of the smartest defensive backs we have here in this team. Guy who is very expressive, a guy who is very smart in that backfield, knows the calls, knows the plays, and is able to get people lined up in the exact right location, which is very encouraging here for this team. Because being a safety, and especially a field safety, this is the guy who is the last line of defense. So he's going to be able to see the coverages from exactly where he's at and to put people in the right places. Also, he's talking about basically these guys have been ball hawks, taking advantage of getting the ball. And we've all heard, even Jaron Thompson said this himself, that Deshaun Jameson has picked off a lot of balls this offseason. And I know a lot of people might not be as high on Jameson. However, Jameson, this is the first year, folks, that Deshaun Jameson has had his position coach for 2 years straight. You got to understand, first year here on campus, he was a wide receiver. Second year, he played cornerback with I think Jason Washington as his coach. His third year, if I'm not mistaken, was who was his coach? It was the Chris Ash years, and so yeah, it was the defensive back coach under Chris Ash. I think it was Jay Valai, if I'm not mistaken. His fourth year, folks, he was the starting cornerback with Terry Joseph, and now this is his next year here. He's having Terry Joseph again, so a little bit of continuity, folks. A little bit of continuity is going to go a long way, I think, with Jameson. And if that happens, he will be able to up his play and hopefully become a draftable, prospect here for the next year.
Seen a lot of growth in 3 weeks. I've seen us it's not just the kicker, but I think inevitably our coverage units, our return units, all those things are really starting to come together, which is an underrated aspect of the game, which takes time. It takes time to find that rhythm in your kicking game and on special teams. So in general, I feel better today than I felt 3 weeks ago about those things, but we're not a finished product either at any one of those three.
Carrick can play.
So he's talking about here the special team side of the house. Yes, special teams worries me. Losing a guy like Dicker the kicker who did punts, did field goals, and did kickoffs. I mean, he was your triple threat. And now he's a guy that just playing on Sundays. And that's why Steve Sarkisian tried extremely hard to keep him here for another season. However, he's not here, and now Texas has to figure out who is going to do all these duties. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how this is going to, actually play out and how these kickers are going to perform, underneath the lights of 100,000 people. So hopefully they can do well. Hey, if we get a kicker that can kick field goals from 40 yards in, I think this team will be great, in that category. And then anything above 40 yards is just gravy. But Texas has the opportunity to have some people step up. And hey, folks, we shall see what happens.
Right tackle too.
Yes, yeah, very flexible.
That was Chip Brown. He basically asked about Andre Carrick and could he play right tackle as well? And he said very flexible. Yes. So there's your answer, folks. He is your swing guy who's going to play all over the line. Maybe he starts at right tackle, depending on just the comfort level that Texas has within Christian Jones. Maybe he's your guy that backs up everybody and a guy that you can slot anywhere. So he feels very comfortable with Andre Carrick playing all over the line, and that is a direct reflection of a guy like Kelvin Banks Jr. and Cole Hudson coming to this team and being prepared and ready to play on day one.
Guys, I kind of was curious about Ethan Burke. Seemed like he got some run and maybe some second team. Justice Finkley, I hadn't really asked you about him in training camp. And Michael Taff, I've heard that he's made some plays in some new scrimmages.
So Ethan has been just a welcome addition to the team. He's a guy who was not here in spring, got here in the summer. He's got a lot of length. He's got natural rush ability, very tough-minded kid. And he's found his way kind of into the two deep. And when he's in there, he does some really positive things. So we're encouraged by him. I think the beauty for Ethan is that he's got a lot of room for growth. I think his best days are ahead of him, but he's definitely made an impact. Justice.
Talking about Ethan Burke, this is a great kudos to the staff. Ethan Burke was one of the latest additions, one of the last additions to the last class, and he was a Michigan commit. He was a lacrosse player at Westlake. Big kid, 6'7", huge frame, can probably fill out to 245, 250. But a big kid, a great pass rushing ability at Westlake. But a lot of people are saying that they are not only intrigued by his pass rushing ability, but they are so shocked and so surprised at his run stopping ability. And he hasn't even filled into his frame yet. He's still a smaller frame guy for his height, but he's been a welcome addition. And that just shows you the level of foresight that this team has seen and that the staff has seen when they do those late evals on players during their senior year. So that's why I think you're always going to see Steve Sarkisian and team keep open 2 to 3 slots for those late bloomers. A guy like Ethan Burke, a guy like Savion Red, who the evals on those guys were very good late, and they're showing that these guys can can possibly produce here at Texas in their first year.
I thought it was, and I met with him on this. I thought he got off to a little bit of a slow start in camp comparatively to kind of how he ended spring ball. But I think that he has picked it up. But I have to remind myself every time I talk to Justice, he's very mature, but he's still a true freshman, right? And there's still a lot of growth for him too. It's like sometimes we hold those guys to a different standard that we're here in spring, but inevitably he and Ethan Burke are still true freshmen together. So big future, big upside for him. And Michael Taft is kind of a bit of a.
Let's pause for a minute and talk about Justice Finkley. He's one of my favorite players from the last cycle. And what Coach Sark is saying is right. People got to understand that these guys, a lot of these guys are true freshmen. And the thing that gets us in trouble in a lot of teams is to expect true freshmen to come here and save the team. That is something that we shouldn't expect to happen. But Finkley, he is the exact, reflection of what you see in a true freshman. You're going to have ups and downs because they're getting used and adjusted to the college game, the college cycle, college practices, just the level of competition. Everybody is you. When you are playing in high school, there's one of you, maybe 2 or 3 of you that you're going to play continuously throughout the season. College ball, everybody is you. Everybody has your level of talent, maybe a little less, maybe a little better, but the mean is you. And so that's where you're seeing that there's going to be ebb and flows, folks, when it comes to these freshmen. That's why you got to have a little patience. You can't depend on these freshmen to come and save the team ASAP. But yeah, it's ebb and flows. Even Xavier Worthy had ups and downs last year, folks. He had ups and downs, and that's things that we have to be used to once we're playing freshmen. And that's something that we're going to have to, just take in and understand that these guys are going to make some mistakes. But like Coach said, the upside, the potential is great, and their best days are actually ahead of them.
A Swiss Army knife, he's a guy that can play multiple positions.
Just Taft.
Very smart, great leadership. He's a guy who's actually, as a walk-on, is on our leadership council. I think that he's got a great voice, and he finds a way. He's got a knack for finding the ball and making plays, whether it's on defense or special teams.
Taft, get the man a scholarship. He's very instrumental to getting, Arch Manning here. He was basically here to be his host on his visits. And I don't think only Arch, but other players as well. But he's a kid, I think, from Westlake as well. Winning culture, winning attitude, had scholarship offers to other schools, walked on here at Texas. I think we're going to see him hopefully with a scholarship here pretty soon. But like Coach said, a Swiss Army knife guy that always finds his way to the ball. And that's because a smart player who knows how to win, knows how to play, and those are guys that can help your team immensely in special teams right away. And not only in special teams, if they're called upon and need to be, they have the mental knowledge, the athletic ability to do great things at this level as well.
What kind of impact does Keilan's personality have on the locker room? And when you've got a guy that may not get 20 touches a game, but still buys in the way he's seemingly buying it, how big is that?
Well, I think one thing Keilan provides is, he's an experienced guy. He's been around college football a lot. He's been around it at a high level. He's made a lot of big plays in his career at both stops. He's interesting because he's very confident. So he can have a little bit more fun, and he's a little bit more loose. And I think that that's good for our young players to realize it's still a game, right? As hard as we want to coach it and we want to play it, when you're confident and you can be relaxed, sometimes that's when we play at our best. And Keilan has the ability to do it. He's very versatile. He's mature. And I do think he has a positive impact on our younger players because he knows what the standard is and what's acceptable and what's not. And he's not afraid to share it, so that part's been good.
Thing about Keilan Robinson that I think everybody's going to have to love here about him. Yes, he was with Sark at Alabama, prior to actually coming to Texas. He knows the system. He's a key performer on special teams. He's a guy that at running back is a really good running back. He's just in a crowded running back room now behind, Bijan and Roshan. But he's a guy that is explosive and he does make a bunch of plays. But when you have a guy who's carefree, a guy that takes the stress off you, tells you everything's going to be all right, it makes the locker room so much more cohesive because it lightens the mood. You ever been at a job and the leader is tight? He's always tight. He's a micromanager. I think we've all been in those situations. And it makes the organization run that same way. Well, I think we all kind of see Sark as kind of a player's coach, a guy that understands what it takes to be a player at that level because he did play at that level, but is his players feed off that. When we have players that are explosive players, good players, players that are respected in that locker room, who carry that same attitude, that same moxie, then guess what? It permeates down below and it makes everybody at ease. So I think that's great to have a guy like Keilan Robinson, who has been with Sark, winning championships at Alabama, and is now able to carry on that same atmosphere, that same attitude here at Texas as well.
I might know somebody that can help with that. We got some work to do there, so we'll see.
Coach, with the player movement, it's not so unusual, but having a guy like Tariq who competed against you as a conference opponent, now integrating him into your system, presumably to be a guy that's going to be counted on. What's that process like to see a guy shift gears to another program that he's competed against?
Well, I think one thing, big picture, is I think this is the world we're in now. I've talked a lot about, the ability to adapt, and these are the times of college football. Transfer portal's real, and so you have to be adaptable to it. And I think for the most part, it's been favorable to us. Tariq has been a great addition. Anytime you can get a veteran player who's competed at a high level in big games, coming from a good program like Iowa State, I think he's been a great addition. I think that one side of it for me is, when you talk to him, I think he thought coming to Texas it was going to be, a lot of glitz and glamour, and he found out we've got a really good culture here. And I take that as a compliment coming from a guy whose program was kind of built on their culture. So that was sometimes the portal can help you there too, that it can help you with, man, we're kind of on the right path of what we're doing. And so I think he recognizes how hard we work, what kind of culture we have, and has integrated himself nicely into our team.
How was that?
Tariq Milton, I think he's going to be one of the unsung heroes out of this transfer portal. With the recent injury of Nair, with the recent suspension of Hall, a guy like Milton is going to be invaluable to this team. I mean, he's so valuable, guys, because he can play all over the field. Got a guy with, no kidding, experience here in the Big 12. He basically, folks want to hear this, but in one season, I think in 2019, he has more yards than Jordan Whittington has in his entire career. And so and we see what Jordan Whittington can be when he's healthy. And I think Tariq Milton is that he's not that same caliber player. I think Whittington has just a little bit more than Milton, but Milton is a speed demon. He's a guy that can stretch the field. He's a complete player, and he's going to pay dividends here at Texas. I think this is the steal of the transfer portal for Texas, and that this is a guy that we're going to see if somebody goes down or needs a breather. He's going to be able to come in and make a play here at Texas, or plenty of plays, because he's done it in his past at Iowa State. He knows the culture at Iowa State and what it takes to have a great cohesive locker room. When you have a guy like that, that's a veteran here in college football. It's going to help out a ton, and I think that's going to only solidify that room.
How's Quinn been looking, this week? And I'm kind of curious from a development standpoint, what do you do from the league during the season to kind of continue with his development? He's kind of scout teams guy. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, I think Quinn has had a good week. I've seen some plays where it's like, okay, we're starting to take another step with him. Some really big time throws on third down. Some of his playmaking in the pocket, made a nice play in 2 minutes today, actually using his legs to create an explosive play. So we're starting to make the strides that I was hoping for. with Malik and with a lot of the guys that are kind of threes, we try to have opportunities where our threes are not just doing scouts, but they're actually working our offense and our defense, competing against one another. But then to make sure that they're still getting reps, you have to get some of that scout team work, because that's what keeps the speed of the game up for them when they got to go against that first defense or that second defense. So all in all, continue to develop, right? We got to dig into what are the things we need him to work on and want him to work on. And then we got to keep pushing for him to do that. And then we got to celebrate the small victories. I think that's something when a guy's not a frontline player, the season can be long. And so you want to be able to celebrate the small victories for not just the quarterback, but anybody, whether it's you're focusing on effort. When they're playing with great effort, you got to make sure we celebrate that. Or when they make an adjustment on a read and then they do it, man, we got to celebrate that, because we want to make sure we're keeping those guys motivated in a positive light, because it definitely have an impact on our team.
All right, so Steve Sarkisian talking about just the maturation process of Quinn Ewers since he has, basically taken over the starting job. And he's saying that he has taken those steps that he would have hoped that he would have taken, and he's seen that improvement, which I think is great, because some guys play with a little bit of stress on their shoulders when they know that they're not the guy, or know that they're still in a competition to be the guy. But when you find out that you are the guy, sometimes the weight is off your shoulders and you can play a little bit more freely, especially when the coach has already said that he doesn't plan on swapping these quarterbacks now. I think he has this guy that he wants, and unless the wheels fall completely off the wagon, this guy's going to stay in regardless, because the offense needs continuity and that guy needs confidence within himself to make sure to assure that he's going to make the plays. One thing that he said that I absolutely love, and I do the same thing here, just in the military, is you got to celebrate the small wins. And that is great, because it is about building the confidence of young players, young troops. Like for me, is you got to build the confidence of these folks. You put a small carrot in front of them, give them a mini milestone, and once they achieve that mini milestone, celebrate the hell out of it, because then they're going to continue to fight hard for you to ensure that they get the next mini milestone. And so he's doing the right things. Coach has learned from the best, the Pete Carrolls. He's learned from the Nick Sabans on how to become and how to be a great coach. And I think he was on his path on that in Washington and also up in USC. And I think we're going to see the best of Steve Sarkisian here at Texas for now and years to come.
What do you learn about, through your experience, about coaching your coaches? Like, you work for Carroll, you work for Saban. What's your approach to coaching?
Well, I think two things. One is you want to communicate really well, and you want to be really well organized. And I think that we do that. We meet every morning. We understand what our schedule is for the day. We understand what the practice plan is and how we want to practice and who's where on the depth chart and different things. But you want to be organized. You want to communicate well. But two, I think you have to set expectations, and then from there, you have to be willing to address when expectations aren't being met. And that could be in style of play. It could be how we're playing the players. It could be how we're recruiting, whatever that is. It could be, how we managing our players off the field. But as long as you communicate well, you set expectation, and you're organized, then, in my opinion, then it's okay to be really demanding of what the expectations are. And we've got great rapport on our staff. I've always gotten a little frustrated, or listen to coaches at other places get frustrated when they don't know what the expectations are, or they don't know X, Y, or Z, and then the coach wants to get on them. And so I've always been of the mindset, and I've been fortunate to have worked for some great coaches, whether it's Pete Carroll, North Turner, Dan Quinn, Nick Saban, really well organized, set a high standard, but yet expectations of what was expected of them, and then held you to the standard. And that, as a coach, that's all you can ask for, because you know what's expected of you.
I love that statement by Coach. Basically, when it comes to holding your coaches to a higher standard, letting them understand what the expectation is for them. So basically, it is giving your coaches a job, letting them know the expectations, and holding them to those expectations, and then hey, folks, I would add one more thing. Let them do their job. Let them do their job and let them succeed. But, folks, that is the reaction for the August 25th Texas football practice reaction video for Sark's press conference. Folks, on that note, man, don't be afraid to fail. Outgrow your environment, understand your brilliance. Horns always up. NinosCorner out. Hook 'em.